Okay. Now, there's all sorts of ways you can go from this point. If we select on something here, you see that all these buttons come on. When we select on a set of angles and a possible birth time, because once it knows the angles, it can work out the possible birth time given the zone standard you put in, which is LMT. You can delete the angle. It's always a delight to do that when you can eliminate it from your search, right? You can test the angle individually. You can go to a chart view, or you could actually abandon shift and just automatically test all the angles, which is something that I do, but I want to just show it to you in slow motion. If you're going to test the angles, what you'd probably do if you're doing it manually is you should take those angles, and if you click chart, you can see it. You'd probably construct the chart with the angles on it, the ones you're going to test, and then you'd probably look at the events in his life which are here, and see, as the events of his life went through, what transits were happening. That's probably what you do, isn't it, as an astrologer? And you might want to look at it with transits, or you might want to look at it with the secondary progressions for these events in his life against this possible chart, or you might want to do that in solar arc, because a lot of astrologers work in solar arc. In the preferences in Jigsaw, you can select the way you do your solar arc. And then you can simply look at each one of his events and see what was happening to help you decide if those angles are relevant. You might want to go in that direction. Or you might want to go in a slightly different way. It's your choice. You might want to click the test button. And then we're going to run, let's do a test with transits. Let's look at just the fourth harmonic, which is actually any transit forming a conjunction to an angle, an opposition to an angle, so it's conjuncting the other angle, or a square to the angles. And we want to actually look at just Uranus, Neptune and Pluto, but we might add Saturn in there, but let's just stick with those three outers, you can choose it. And then let's actually do transits to the ascendant, the MC, and the moon. The moon's always handy because, of course, the moon's moving, 12 degrees or so over the 24 hours. So transits to the possible moon of a chart can help you rectify. So let's just do that. And let's scan. Well, it's going to take the earliest date to the latest date. Let's not go. Let's just go up to the last event. Okay, so we'll just click OK. This is going to take us to a different screen again. Alright, so what Jigsaw has done is it's gone through and it's put the chart here and it's worked out the dates where these planets were actually forming transits to this set of angles. And as it's done it, as I click on each one, it tells you Uranus to the ascendant, that's the transit to this possible chart. You don't know if the chart's real or not, this possible chart. These are the sort of events that should be happening. They're just little memory joggers. And then it goes down to his, it goes down to his list of events, his life events down here. It tells you how old he was when the event happened. That's really handy because if he's 6 or 10 or 50, it makes a difference. And it'll find the closest event it can to that situation. And it says, well, this is the closest one. Interested in astrology, you think, wow, that's good. But hey, it misses it by 405 days. Tad out. The Uranus, when he was actually interested in astrology, was actually 13 to 15 degrees of Aquarius, not here at 8. So that's not hitting. It's not working, in other words. And indeed, it goes through all the possible ones. And when it actually does work, it puts it in green. So when he becomes convinced of zero astrology, if it's this chart, he has Pluto on the descendant. Indeed, Jigsaw has actually calculated this to this chart using the square, 7 of which were at least linked to an event. The computer doesn't know if it's linked in a symbolic way. It's just a straight out number crunching link. Yes, here's the date where the thing happened, the transit happened, and yes, there's a piece of data for that date. I've got no idea what the data is, but there it is. And so that's a set hit rate. We can So for every set of angles, be quick, we can actually do test or chart, working them through. Remember with the test we can change whether we're working in transits or solar arc or whatever. If we retest this in the second harmonic, which is what I prefer, which is then all you're looking at is when a planet is conjuncting the cross of matter, either the ascendant, the IC, the descendant, or the MC, isn't it? That's really what you're working with. And we run that one. Go back into options. We can adjust the chart a little bit. If we want to just tweak it, we say let's just sort of tweak this a little bit, make it 10. Adjust, run the whole thing again, see what we get. Do you know, if you think you just need to tweak it a little, that's a really handy thing. Or you can go back in and say, I want to do it with solar arc now. Okay, so literally you can go through and you can test every single one like that. You can print out the sheets and you can end up with a pile of 10 or so sheets, looking at them thinking this was 33%, this is 5%, this is whatever. And indeed that's a process that you will sometimes do. You have that option. That's stepping it through one at a time. Or you can click this button, right? In other words, if you're really impatient, right?
Click this button to give you that's what she's doing.
Yeah. But you see, this button only makes sense when you know what's going on, right? If we click this button, Jigsaw's going to go and work out. It's going to take every set of angles we've got here, and it's going to do transits, second progressions, and solar arc for each one. And with each scan, transit will go through and work out how many transits there were and how many events matched, how many times matched into the data. It's going to do that for second progressions. It's going to do it for solar arc. It's going to do them all and put them down on the table for you and giving you a storage percentage at the end as to how viable these are. So now, could you please tighten your seatbelts and not, right? And it's going to do it so fast, but I can tell you the work that it actually is doing is huge. There we are, done. Done all of those.
That is auto-rectify.
Yeah, this is what, if you, yes.
Done that in the first video.
Yes, absolutely. You could literally put the data in and just click auto-rectify. You could ignore, apart from the warning screen, apart from that screen and warning screen, you have to deal with that. But then you could just click auto-rectify and it does this. But, I mean, I'm an old teacher, so, right? And I think you'll get more out of software if you actually understand what it's doing, rather than just button push. Okay, this is Bernadette Brady chipping into the workshop to expand on what's now happening in the workshop, to add a little bit more explanation than what I actually gave in the workshop. What we've got in front of us is Cyril Fagan's list of angles, having clicked auto-rectify, and as Roy said in the workshop, if you just actually go straight to auto-rectify right at the beginning, and I'm going to go right back and do that, quit out of all of these. If we did here in rectification and we did auto-rectify for Cyril Fagan, then we would actually get back to this list again. What we can see is a list of times here, and some of them are quite inferior in terms of, for example, the birth time of 129 got very, very few hits by the angles. These sets of angles of 9 Pisces and 22 Sag only got 1 out of 8 transits of the outer transits to the angles, 1 out of 2 progressions, 4 out of 6 solar arcs, a little bit better. But overall, there's only 13%. So in terms of if this was Cyril Fagan's angles, then quite honestly, his angles are not sensitive to major transits at all, and we would think that something like Uranus, Neptune or Pluto forming a conjunction or an opposition or a conjunction to the angle, an opposition to an angle is then a conjunction to the next, to the other angle, we would think they would be sensitive. So we could think, right, this really is not very good and is probably not relevant for the whole process that we're looking at. So on, we can keep going down this list, and really anything that's less than 50% or so, we can eliminate. So here's 211, which is also responding very badly. So if he had an ascendant of 6 to 8 degrees of Aries and a corresponding MC of 2 to 3 of Capricorn, and if that was his set of angles, then there's been 7 times Uranus, Neptune or Pluto has gone over those angles by conjunction, but only 2 times do we have corresponding dates in our list. So that's not really that relevant. And remember, the dates in our list are also any of the dates, even if we've turned them off, it's still Jigsaw's still going to be aware of them. So we can probably eliminate that as well. And so on here, the 237, not that responsive. The 418, similarly not that responsive. Here we've got the 617, it is pretty responsive, 63%, yeah, we'll leave that. The 830, definitely not responsive. The 1023, not responsive. 12 o'clock, which we know is his actual birth time, is quite responsive. You notice it's not the top, but it is quite responsive. 235, maybe okay, we'll leave it there. 538, 44%, not that good. 828, also not that good. So this gives us a list that we can then prune. Now, we can't delete, I would like very much to be able to delete these from this list immediately that I'm looking at. But the reality is I could never get Graham, who did all the wonderful coding work for this software, and is really totally a co-designer with me. The two of us worked together, but he was the one writing the code. I could never get him to put a delete key on this list. So what we've got to do is what I do anyway, is I write down the times I want to eliminate. And so I'm writing down 129 on a pad, 211, I'm going to eliminate 237, I'm going to eliminate 418, I'm going to eliminate 830, I'm writing these down on a pad, I'm going to eliminate 10:23 a.m., keeping the 12 at 62%, I'll keep the 235 at 54%, I'm going to eliminate the 5:38 p.m. and also the 8:28 p.m. And I'm going to eliminate those angles from my search. Now the way I do that is I simply click on quit and I go back to this screen, which is the list of angles, and I simply eliminate. I select it. The first one I want to delete is 1:29 a.m. and I simply select that and then I click delete angle. And it's done it. Then I want to delete the 211, so I delete the angle. I want to delete the 237, I delete the angle. I want to delete the 418, make sure it's highlighted, delete the angle. I want to delete the 8:30 a.m., highlight it, delete the angle. I want to delete the 10:23, delete the angle. I want to delete the 5:38, delete the angle. Now I think you can see why I like to sort by time. It makes this process easier. And I want to delete the 8:28, delete the angle. And that leaves me with a much, much shorter list. And then I can click auto test angles again, and then I get a list. Now, what's important to understand here is I want you to realise that Cyril Fagan was born at 12 noon, and we're getting other times which are also very responsive to transit and progressions and solar arcs, and that doesn't mean that they're more correct than the 12 noon. What we know now is that this really is the top 4, 5 or 6 possible options that you have for your birth time. And what you need to do now, Jigsaw really has gone as far as it can. It's used all the astrological tools that we have, solar arc, progressions and transits, given you the ability to change orbs, to change what aspects you're looking for, to what planets you're doing it to, put this totally at your disposal and enabled you to run very fast testing, and it gives you a short list. But from here now, we need to bring in the concept of qualitative judgment. So far we've been using quantitative in terms of just straight out number crunching, 3 times out of 8, twice out of twice, 5 out of 5, percentages, number crunching. Now we need to bring the quality in of these times. So what we can do is we can click on any one of these and then click chart, and we can actually go to that put up as a chart, that particular set of angles put up for a chart, what it would look like, the natal planets, etc. And now here, down the side, we have the list, the full list of all the different events that have happened to him. This is a amazing tool in Jigsaw because it enables you to look at charts and look at transits or progressions or solar arc, etc. And this is where we'll now pick up the workshop again when we actually enter into this phase of the rectification.